Hey gang, it's Fillmore. For those of you who are jonesing for the extra Sunday episodes, no longer available on YouTube, you can access them on patreon.com/JimFix, JIMFIXX. If you sign up for the Whiskey Sobbing Computer Board level at $2.50 a month, you'll have access not only to those extra Sunday episodes that are no longer available on YouTube, but you will get 50% of the Patreon content going forward. If you would like full access to all Sunday episodes, all Patreon content, including the last 32 episodes or 33 episodes produced thus far, just sign up for the Black Kluge $5 level or higher. If you want to give us more money, you are more than welcome to. For those of you who don't do PayPal, or Patreon rather, we have a PayPal address as well, johnnythegreek21@gmail.com. For those of you who cannot get Patreon to work and would like to use PayPal as a method of monthly payment, we will only accept donations from the Black Kluge level or higher. And privately, personally, we will send you all the episodes on Patreon and the missing Sunday episodes, of course.
Makes me feel like a... You know what, though? But none of that stuff impresses me. I'm not a big star-effer. I'm not really...
Stop it. Just stop.
I'm not into it.
Stop, please.
You think I'm a star-effer?
Why go?
Because I've gotten friendly with Kira. She lives in my neighborhood.
That's because you're a star-effer.
No, she invites me to a million things. Why is that a star-effer? She's a nice girl.
What were you doing this weekend?
I'm really into the internet now. I've developed a love of the internet. And I can't stand that this schlub, Phil Graham, is screaming that we have to censor the internet. It's repulsive to me. It's repugnant.
Listen, I'm very well versed on the new technologies. You know what a SIM card is?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do. I see it in my phone when I take the
You're not
battery.
only going to see it in your phone, you're going to see it in your car very soon, a SIM card. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And once that happens, it's called game changer.
I never read the social media comments about this show. I can't stand social media because I hate that people have power now. You know, in the old days, if you hated me, you'd have to write a letter to the station.
What do you think about Baba Booey? What do you think about Artie? Everyone likes Artie. Artie's super funny. They describe him as, a little bit crude, but funny and likable. Baba Booey, everyone loves Baba Booey. I'm reading the research, and then it gets to me and they go, well, because Howard's so controversial, maybe this is the reason for the result. Like, 40% of the people kind of like me. The rest of them think I'm a fucking asshole.
Really?
Crude.
Everybody loves
disgusting.
Artie.
Oh, Artie, yeah.
But are you sure they really know who me and Baba Booey are?
I don't know. They like you.
And the other thought I had was that if the FCC does kick us off the air, how would we reach these millions of people that listen to us? Will we just fade away? What if we have an announcement to make to them or we want to communicate with them? This would be a great contingency. So make it free, make it up there, and let the fans have fun. And I didn't have any moderators, nothing. I said, anyone can write what they want. Yeah, right. So now when you go on there, there's like thousands of posts of just like, and I don't even know who the people are. It's almost like people who hate the show more than people who like it. And it's like you get on there and it's like, Stern sucks. He's a homo. Robin's a pain in the ass. That's a horse face. Artie's a jack off. Kill Howard.
Oh, well, what am I going to do? Anyway, the birthday bash is there for you for free. And not because I couldn't sell it to a network. Yes, many networks did want it, but I thought this
But
would
who
be
would
nice.
even think that way?
I don't know, and the thoughts are so rapid.
Welcome, folks, to Colford Part 6. This is QF, podcast about Howard Stern. I'm your host, Fillmore, and with me, of course, is Sam. Welcome back, Sam, from the snowstorm. It's no longer that issue anymore. How are you?
I see grass on the ground. It's very wet and ugly, but it's there. No more snow.
Well, God bless spring. And welcome back to you, Ben. How are you doing?
Doing good. Glad to see you guys again.
It's good to be into this one again, and we're going to actually make some headway into vegetation of Robin eventually. The consensus is that people want us to go into Hurricane Sandy saga, but I do want to dip my toe in the vegetation of Robin at least one episode so that we have an anchor in the water. Guys, just a quick thing. This particular episode, I realized that in the Colford book, it skims over Howard's first job after BU. And it was like a job in Newton, Massachusetts. And he explains it better in the History of Howard Stern. But it completely occurred to me that we were missing that. So we're going to go back in time a little bit. But the first thing we're going to play is something called Jesus Movie at Boston University Debunked. So in the movie Private Parts, they say he wooed Allison by calling her or telling her, look, I want you in my movie, and it's going to be about Jesus. So
he made himself seem like a Louis B. Mayer type person.
Right.
Like, I'm casting you in this, and you're going to be my Judy. But it's not anything cool or like that, and it's
right.
And it's not even really the plot that he even said, which I don't even know why he lied.
Well, this is what I don't understand. It says here, in the top of page 33, first, as a part of a class assignment, Howard was enrolled in the broadcasting film division of the School of Public Communications. He convinced Allison to appear in a movie he was making about transcendental meditation. So we did cover that. But then in the movie Private Parts, they say it's about Jesus. In the History of Howard Stern, this is what they said.
Allison's relationship started, the two became virtually inseparable. In the winter of '75, he cast his new girlfriend and fellow Schmaltz brother Bob Petrick in a student film Howard was making for class, The Second Coming of
Jesus Comes Again.
Howard's famous movie, his movie that he produced for his cinematography class.
Jesus! You know what this reminds me of? You know the movie Saving Something with
Saving Silverman?
with Russell Brand and Kristen. Come on, and they do the rock opera, and he makes that rock opera at the end. Jason.
No clue. Jason Biggs.
Now I'm embarrassed.
Is that called Get Him to the something?
Get Him to the Greek?
That Dracula rock opera. Yeah.
No idea.
I wonder the motives of a Jewish man who does not believe in Jesus and hates anyone who does believe in Jesus. Why would you make a movie about Jesus?
And he also said that he kind of was atheist at some point in his life, and his religious beliefs are always cloudy for me. Like, I never know where he really stands on it, because there's times where he seems like a real Zionist and other times where he's kind of flirting with Christianity, and then it's definitely there's nobody, you're gonna go in the hole and that's it.
Well, he's ultimately just a magical thinker, and he does pray to God whenever he wants something, and he credits his prayer whenever that something he wants happens. Yeah. And then otherwise roasts anyone who would resort to that, to pray to the invisible man in the sky, as he always says.
Mm-hmm. Well, in the movie, we'll play a little more of the clip, and then we'll go into this abstract from the actual book, Private Parts. So Here's the last bit of that.
It was a big blockbuster cast. It had his first wife, Allison, who was going out with him at the time, had my girlfriend, Orna, and me, and a lot of Allison's roommates. And the premise of the movie was, I was Jesus Christ.
Okay, so I don't know why they decided to make this double down on the Private Parts mythology, like the movie mythology, and make this.
Or is it just that Colford got it wrong? It's one or the other. I mean,
well, if he got it wrong, then Howard got it wrong, because this is from Private Parts. It said, I still had figured she wasn't really into me, but I had this chance. But this chance encounter gave me courage. So I came up with an elaborate scam. I had to do a junior film project for one of my courses. I decided to do an 8mm documentary on transcendental meditation.
So I guess it could be he just was wrong, and then Colford assumed he was telling the truth and reported it as such. Did his research through reading Private Parts. It could be.
Which if you did your research through Private Parts, then most of it's a fallacy. So
right. Well, I mean, he paints Howard as a loving father and a devoted husband, and he was neither of those things. But right. I think I think he might have just taken Howard's word for it.
I suppose, but then to get it in the movie completely off. I mean, and I talked about this with James Santiago, and we both kind of questioned why make it about Jesus, except if you just don't want to appear like a kook. And I think you and I discussed this in the last episode as well, Ben. It doesn't sound very rock and roll to it, or it doesn't sound very rebel if you're making a film about a cult.
Well,
yeah, he actually. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I guess you would have to, at the time, go back to what's more safe to say. And I think if you were to say this now, or if you were to say this even like 15 years ago, more people were coming out and being, a part of these sort of transcendental meditation followings. Celebrities became more open about being and doing these things. But back then, I don't really see any of them talking about that.
Yeah, back in the 80s, he actually snapped at Allison on the air when she said she needed to go meditate. He goes, "Don't say that on the air." He snaps at her and says, "I don't want people thinking that we're kooks." I mean, there's a good reason to. They believed they could meditate and bring world peace. They actually were having an event where they were all going to get together in Washington, D.C. Howard interviewed the Maharishi at that. And they were going, and they, and it's no different from any other celebrity interview that he does now. Anyway, so people were right to believe that they were kooky.
Yeah.
Don't you think, though, it is interesting the way he thinks about meditation, though? He thinks of it, like you said, as magical thinking to bring him something he wants, versus what I believe actual meditation could provide somebody if they're in that sort of mindset is the same thing as prayer or anything else. You're trying to set yourself outside of your ego and, bring a higher power to yourself, to think outside of yourself. Howard uses it as something that's going to manifest something for him. And so it's incredibly backwards thinking for what it's supposed to be in general.
Well, there's, we've also discussed about how there's Gary, who's had an experience at least once. Robin's definitely had multiple experiences of getting scammed, and Howard has talked in the history of Howard Stern, and of course the regular show, about being scammed by people in the past, and then of course going into TM, and then you add getting things done. So it doesn't surprise me one bit that people can 3-card Monty him anytime they want, mostly because he's gullible, mostly because he's an idiot. Like you add every single reason why, and it doesn't surprise me in the slightest that he could be taken for a ride. So the next clip here, I believe, is audio from his Newton, Massachusetts job after BU. So this is going back in time a little bit, guys, but it's not in the Colford book very little, except for one little blurb.
I don't remember too much other than the fact that we had to get him a car to get to this studio.
Oh, how nice.
And especially considering the last breakdown we just did, where I got very emotional, actually, because he was really abusive towards Ben and Ray, and they're having to deal with their problems in the community, the nursing home community that they are in. And so this just underscores why people fucking hate him more than ever now.
We had to get him a car.
Yeah.
Do any of you remember that in your life?
No. My mom paid for a car when I was a teenager, and then I assumed the payments.
You
that's how
had
it started.
what you had to do was pay them back. So they got a spreadsheet out and they said, here, you're going to have a 97 purple Escort because that's what we're paying for.
Yeah.
And it's $2,000 something, $3,000. And this is how much you're giving us every month or every week from your part-time job at the buffet.
Yeah.
And you will be paying us until it's paid off.
Mm-hmm.
There's no
Not in the Stern household.
No, we had to get him it. We had to get him a car.
And considering how little he can find his way back walking these days, you can only imagine him behind the wheel of a car and driving anywhere, especially New York.
Yeah, he probably complained that the car didn't come with a driver. Like, why do I have to drive myself?
I can't see. And even then, don't you feel the sense of privilege that your parents even got you something? Like, to me, it was like, I don't care what it is. That is so great that they can do that for me and I can pay it back. But at least I have this privilege of having a parents who are doing that for me. Howard thinks nothing of this.
No, God,
I think he would focus on, why did I have to ask in the first place?
Why didn't I get an 8-track deck in this thing?
Yeah, why did I have to wait?
Exactly.
That was after the BU. He got a job in a commercial station near the school, part-time.
I thought it was to the college radio.
No, that was right on campus.
Oh,
so
but,
that's when we rushed out.
He told us about it. That much I do remember.
So, there again, supporting him in what he wanted to do. I got him a car, and it worked out for him.
I said, this is easy.
Okay. Sorry, guys, just going to let that one go.
I'm still in college. I'm working at WNTN in Newton, Massachusetts. I'm happy.
That's good.
I get on a couple of times. He tells me what he's going to pay me. He was going to pay me a couple of bucks. I was like, hey, okay, I'm a professional now. Yeah, payday comes.
I'm in the business.
Payday comes, no paycheck.
Right.
I said to the guy, where's the paycheck? He goes,
sucks.
He goes, you're horrible.
Oh, no.
He goes, I don't have to pay you. You're lucky to be here.
You're horrible.
Are you serious?
No kidding. He goes, you're terrible. I was horrible.
Yeah, but a
you
guy.
make a deal, you make a deal.
Right.
This guy
he
was
has
not
to pay for your time.
This guy was
Sam?
It's just so funny that your parents are really making your full-time job and career happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really taken aback by that amount of support after college from your parents,
Mm-hmm.
and for him to be so obscenely nasty to them and not grateful.
Yes.
There are parents that really support you after college. Once that's done, you're on your own. Like,
well, yeah,
you're on your own. Your life is your life. You make of it what you will.
Yeah. Well, it's either well, he's not grateful, or he's and especially he's indifferent sometimes, or if he's not outright hostile, like, why, he got me a lousy this, or and then he mentions at times he mentions, oh, they paid for the freight, they paid for my college, my education, but it's almost an afterthought. The way he mentions it sometimes, and then other times he's grateful. It seems like he's grateful, but I think deep down inside, no, he's never been grateful. He has no honor where that's concerned.
No.
Doesn't it seem like he's always waiting for somebody to do something for him or see something in him? Like you hear him say, they thought I was off. He doesn't ever consider any of these things. He thinks it's like just something he's earned and has the right to be there and doesn't have to do a goddamn thing to make himself be impressive.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like, so now this fell into my lap. How are people going to surround me to build me up, to make me better, and not the other way around of like, what am I going to do to turn it out?
Well, here's what I suspect happened. Because he's got very poor comprehension and he's very unreliable. I would suspect that this was always understood that this was an unpaid internship. He was still in college. And that potentially it could lead, if he was to eventually be hired, then he would be getting this much money. But I suspect, I've never heard of someone just saying when payday comes, oh, I'm not going to pay you. I didn't like what you didn't do a very good job.
Yeah, that seems insane.
That seems crazy. It reminds me a lot of...
There could be somebody he would go complain to. He said this was corporate radio.
Mm-hmm.
This reminds me a lot of, like, remember back in the day, Sam Roberts, Opie and Anthony, he started off as an intern. The kid was an intern. Now he's doing the Jim and Sam show on Sirius. He worked his way up, but he knew what the deal was. Luckily, his parents were rich enough to let him go to a really good college. He got to intern there, but it was an unpaid internship up until a point, and then he was a part-time employee, and then whatever. But there was never this cluelessness of oh, am I gonna get paid? Am I not gonna get paid? He knew he was putting the work in.
Well, I keep in mind, guys, this is the same person who called himself. He's claimed he was a dishwasher when he was working at WellMed. It came with the job, but it doesn't mean you were a dishwasher. You were a counselor. You were an adult counselor. Right. But he wanted to call that, that's manual labor. Either way, so. Okay. Yeah, so we'll play a little bit more of this clip.
That honorable.
They could pull that crap on radio and know.
He was a BU student. And I guess he graduated, or someone made him a program. This station had no money.
Was he any good?
He was horrible. In fact, he was so bad. He had to do. At the time, the FCC made you do Sunday morning public affairs programming.
In Palos Verdes.
Okay, here we go, guys. One sec.
California, 2,000 species of plant life grow 10 feet above 3 million tons of rusted cars, trash, and garbage. This South Coast Botanic Garden, a dump transformed into a paradise. It proves volunteer projects can return to the land to natural beauty.
Do you not hear that little kind of swishy delivery of his in the tone of voice? I mean, it's almost oh God, this is horrible. He should be working for Queer Eye for the Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. The way he sounds, this affectation. Sam?
The thing I noticed about the delivery was he's reading something, but he's not understanding it. And you can hear that when he says botanic garden. He's not actually processing the information that he's reading while he's reading it. He's very stupid. And
yes,
you can sense that when he's reading it, he's just looking at it like a flashcard on SNL or something. It's a very poor delivery because he's not processing what he's reading.
It was like when Carson was doing a plug for a new product and called it an entree instead of entree, and then realized he screwed up on the air and just started laughing. This next one is called Wiggy Gets Discouraged from His Dream Pretty Quickly.
Sick of everything. He was an older guy. He had a couple of shifts here in the city at this radio station on weekends.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Nice guy, Donald J. Barnett.
Oh, I remember that name.
Yeah. And Meg and all of them, they didn't get along with him. There was, they were all hippies playing on whatever they wanted.
Okay, so this is basically to the point of the same page on 33 of the Colford book, that he was discouraged from his dream so quickly. If it was really your dream, would you throw in the towel as quickly as he did right away?
No.
So again, and to combat somebody on the in the last episode who commented, do we think he had no talent, zero talent, and he's from BU onwards, he lacked any discernible talent going forward? Okay, so he copied Steve Dahl. You'd have to check out the comment, and my argument was, well, yeah, pretty much. We're arguing that he stumbled upwards with the help of, Buchwald and more creative people surrounding him, or better sounding people around him, and copied from the right people. And at a time when you couldn't, find these things out, basically. There was no international radio. Sam?
There's a difference when you watch a story of somebody who's hungry and really wants something. Like you watch that, you watch that Kanye West documentary, Genius. You watch this kid producing beats, and you watch him hunger to be this rapper, and you go through the whole thing, and you see that drive. You see that. You don't see that in Howard. You don't see him wanting exactly and knowing who he is and knowing what he's going to be and having something to say. You don't see that drive in him. You see this failure of upward luck in circumstance. And it is so the stars align of him and certain people in his life that came in there, but there isn't that actual drive and passion in
That's
something.
the word. That's the key. What have you seen him be passionate about? Nothing, ever.
It's incredibly different.
Right. He goes through fads like people change underwear, and then ultimately with radio, he had a disdain for it while he was working for it. So it was really fame he was hungering, guys.
He further had no interest in it. I mean, he couldn't tell you. He wouldn't know if his delivery sounded bad because he didn't listen to radio. It's a weird thing to claim to be that's your dream, and yet you don't like listening to music. You don't like listening to talk. So
that's right.
All you like is hearing your own voice. That's really what it's down to.
Yeah, and that's what you're going to hear.
He didn't. He was all fed up with hippies. And,
he had to get away from the hippies.
I walk in with a nice suit and short haircut. Looks at me, goes, "You're hired. I might have something for you."
He never listened to the tape.
He did listen to the tape.
Oh, he did.
He listened to the tape. He called me. He goes, "I'm going to give you something." He goes, "I'm going to put you on 10 to 2 at night." He goes, "Because I think you're going to show up." I go, "What do you mean?"
Because you're going to be good.
No. He goes, "You seem reliable, like a nice guy. He'll be here." And I turned it down.
What?
I got scared. I listened to the station. I heard Meg, and I heard this guy Joe from Chicago who was on, and I heard all the different people who were working there. And I said, "I'm not good enough.
So being that insecure, having spent all this time in your basement with a mock radio setup or a real, recording studio in your basement, and you're that insecure about your voice, but you don't have the guts or the willingness to try it out and see if you're good at it. But again, that just goes to the point that, we failed. If he did fail, it was due to lack of talent. And if he chose not to push forward initially, that kind of gives you more insight into his strength of character, which is almost nil. Sam?
It's also about these people who were working there, like Meg. Mm-hmm. They have this undying passion for artists.
Yes.
And they want to showcase music, and they understand the music, and they understand the up and coming music, and they are trying to cultivate all of these great artists. And Howard doesn't have that eye. He doesn't have that talent. And I bet he was around a lot of people and DJs who had some sort of musical intuition that he just didn't possess,
Oh God, no.
So not only is it him not having that voice, that, radio voice that he proclaims to not have, but it's not having that deep love of music, deep love of music.
Right.
I also believe this is just total revisionist history, that he turned them down because he knew he should be working at one of the top New York stations, and it was only a matter of time before PLJ or whomever puts Howard Stern on. He sent them his tapes also. So, and his dad had good connections at these kind of places. I think he just scoffed at, "You want to pay me for something an hour to be heard in this small, 10,000 watt, whatever it is, 20,000 watt station? No, I'm destined for much bigger things." I really think he thought, this is beneath me.
This is definitely true, though. He does because Ben's connections, he knew he could bank off of those. And what is going to give him the biggest bang for his buck?
Well, at the bottom of the page, this is where the last where the Colford stuff ended, and then the book took over. The audio tapes, ended. Barnett filed Howard's tape towards the front of his preferences for future job openings. When Barnett called, one sec. All my alarms are going off, and I forgot I set them. Barnett filed Howard's tape towards the front of his preferences for future job openings. When he called to offer work not long afterwards, Howard cited other commitments and declined. Privately, Howard was unsure of his talent and uncertain about the radio business. In making the rounds of radio stations in search of a job, he had come across has-beens from New York radio who now toiled in out-of-town obscurity. He submitted to this insecurity and took a couple of safer positions, including an entry-level opportunity with the New York advertising agency of Benton and Bowles. Only after Allison and his parents noticed what he himself felt gnawing at him, that he had made a boneheaded detour from the radio career that he wanted, did Howard reverse himself and phone Barnett for a second chance. So this clip ties into that. And we've already covered the WNRW stuff in the previous episode, so we don't really go through all of. We go back to that. This kind of bookends that right now. Sam?
And then you also have to understand, too, that New York was radio. You know, like it's the mecca of, if you make it as a New York DJ, you're something, you got clout.
Right. And it was 3,000 watts, not even 10.
3,000. Oh, I was really giving them credit. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I can't do this.
Somebody gave you a job and you turned it down?
I turned it down. And a guy named Harris Allen got the job. I listened to him a couple of weeks later, and he sounded so good.
Harris Allen.
He had a big, deep voice, Harris Allen.
Yeah.
And I went, well, he deserves the job over me. I'm a loser, failure. I don't deserve to be on the radio. And then I set out to go find an alternative career after 4 years.
That's when you decided you got to do something else?
So I started taking the train every day into the city. My parents, okay, I'm
going to let this play out, guys.
I had a briefcase full of resumes. You should see this resume. If you saw this resume, you'd throw up. It was a big lie. And I would go into the city, and there was a coffee shop. People were all walking around looking like they had something to do. Everybody had something to do. You should see. I would walk around, and everyone was on their way to somewhere. And
Wait a minute, you got to tell me what was on that resume. Did you have jobs when you were in college?
I know.
Okay, he probably looked like Dorothy in Oz. So
it always sounds like people are having to, the difference between somebody with drive that wants to put themselves in a position versus somebody who wants to be ushered into the position.
Oh yeah.
He's hungry to make money, but he's so insecure that it sounds like, these vital parts of his career, the narrative that he pushes, it isn't this. The narrative he pushes is he was that underdog that really was hungry for that bone, and he really wanted that. And it's not true.
Well, I mean, when he finally starts getting into radio and then starts doing the gigs and then moving his way on up, there's false elements in almost every step of the way, and especially with the last episode, the music. That was what we really focused on in part 5. How not only did he have no feeling for the music or passion for the music, he didn't actually know what to play. He didn't even know that you should be playing this at this station. You don't have to like it to be cognizant of what's hip and what everybody else is playing, and get in the mindset of that, even if you want to play some of your own preferences. But he had no preferences.
No, and it's interesting to just hear him in these phases of talking it out, and you see that he just really, he knew he was better than what he thought he was doing or where he was at. So that's why he took the New York thing. But you see the mentality not being about the music and not being about the job itself. It's about being known.
Yes.
And it's about different. It's not about these pure things that people really want when they want that dream.
Yeah.
And that's the disheartening part of this, because he always makes it different. He always makes it seem he wanted to be the bad boy. I wanted to get this out. I wanted to say this. I wanted to do that. No, you just wanted to climb that corporate ladder.
Well, yeah, and he wanted to be king shit, but and the narrative right now, absolutely. I was a rock DJ, and during the summit, video, we go in, who loves rock and roll more than me? that kind of attitude. Neil Young shouldn't be able to shit without hearing about us. What?
By the way, I have a copy of Howard's resume from 1977 here.
Oh, really?
Oh,
yeah,
wonderful.
He reproduces it in private parts.
Okay.
I can read to you some of this was when he was the program director of WRNW, so he was sending it out to try to get his next big job. Related employment, January to May of 1976 at BU. He taught students basic electronics in preparation for a FCC examination. He talks about his education. Major was broadcasting and film. Minor, speech and English.
What?
During college career, served in 3 area radio faculties. Oh, sorry, facilities. This is small. Both commercial and non-commercial in various capacities. Assistant news director for a 50 kilowatt station. Producer of nationally syndicated talk shows. Air personality. Production director and host of weekly radio theater. This was while he was at BU, he says. At WNTN, the station in Newton, where he says that he worked there for a week and his boss said, "You're horrible."
Yeah, and wasn't paid.
He was there from August to December.
Oh.
And he has it listed as air personality for WNTN Radio 1550 AM Rock. Station served Boston and vicinity. Responsibilities included air shift, newscasting, and production. In April of 76 to November of 77, he is production director responsible for entire WRNW production department. And so he doesn't put his Benton and Bowles stuff in here. It was too minor.
No.
Responsible for entire WRNW production department and directing the creativity of this award-winning facility. Produced, voiced, and wrote many freelance commercials. He's got freelance as 2 words. Frequently developed many innovative production techniques, significantly improving station sound, coordinated production scheduling, and served as liaison between air and sales staff, initiated many quality standards and new concepts while planning and implementing production smoothly. This is all the kind of Tim Sabian speak that all of us go, what are you saying? November 77 to present, program director successfully introduced a new program format, advanced WRNW's position in the market through complete image overhaul and format change, responsible for hiring and supervising air staff and news and production departments. And this is the last one, December 76 to present, WRNW air personality, served as both morning drive and midday announcer, developed personable and innovative approach to AOR, that's adult-oriented rock, and soft rock formats, hosted talk programs, made numerous public appearances and broadcast remotes, and was the subject of several newspaper articles. So we know of the one where he's mentioned in it, but he's not the subject.
Right. Well, I mean, when you want to talk about what's that one that there's a scene in the movie She's Having a Baby where the guy goes, "You have set new standards in lying," when they do the job interview, and Kevin Bacon goes, "You must want the job pretty bad." He goes, I need to work." And then the other guy in the office doing the hiring goes, "How do you feel about slave wages?" "Slave wages are fine." And then one guy goes, "How do you feel about alcoholics?" And then there's a pause, and Kevin goes, "I like alcoholics." It's a great scene. Anyway, Sam, I know you want to say something about this one.
I just think that these opportunities that he was given, he could have really helped integrate. I guess integrate it into his career and make it and learn something from these DJs, from these like lesser known places. And really learn from it and grow from it. But instead of doing that, he just kind of said, "I'm not good enough" in his own head, and then got out. But these people
that's
that he was working at,
that's if you believe what I believe is a revisionist history of things.
I agree with that too. And I also think, just how he talked about Meg Griffin, you knew he felt some sort of way about her. Like, this girl knows her stuff. Like, I can't compete with that. I can't be, imagine talking to a musical person, and you're sitting next to them and you're a phony about what you really like.
Certainly.
So you would be known as a fraud. And I think Howard genuinely tried to run away from people that could expose him as not what he wanted to present himself to be. And Meg Griffin would be one of those people.
Well, so while he's there, and I mean that we covered it in the last episode, he barely had a personality. They just said he was bland and colorless, and he just sort of like wallpaper.
Malleable.
And he didn't, so he would pick things like Pablo Cruz, and Raven and I discussed that in Rescue 79, our episode that's will already have been out, the breakdown that we did, and he just had no clue what he was doing. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, and he does kind of admit it at some point. But I think real humility would have been saying, I copied all the way. I bullshitted the entire time. Had no idea what I was doing. And like that kid, like I copied off essays off my best friend, and
I used Cliff Notes.
Right. Well, yeah, just do it. Just say it. Like it's certainly more human, as he might say, to admit that you had these shortcomings, that as opposed to dressing it up and saying, ever since I was 6, I wanted to be on the radio.
But then it gets even worse when he proclaims himself to be this knowledgeable person of that and judging this music and saying, I know the best. You give these things like, I love the Stones, or I love the Foo Fighters, or whatever the fuck he says. You don't know what you're talking about. And that's genuine. You don't know what you're talking about. You should have stuck to not knowing and integrating people into the show that did, instead of being and presenting yourself as this all-knowing rock god. It's fucking absurd.
He actually has contempt for people who know what they're talking about when it comes to music, because
he does.
Cannot stand when he's like, I hate when guys want to go and discuss music, like discuss what band is better or whatever. And it's always like, why are you listening to music? You should be learning to play an instrument. Which is, you usually learn to play an instrument because you like listening to music. Yes. You don't go and say, I'm going to be on the radio because I hate the radio, except unless you're Howard Stern.
Yeah. There's a clip from about 2015. I'm going to play. It's like 8 seconds long. They're playing a Bush song, and he says he loves it, but he can't name it. So I'm going to see if I can see if it's the right one. Hold on.
That's a good song. Always loved the band Bush. I love their songs.
He's stuck for a name. Yeah. Anyway, what are you gonna do? So let's continue with this one.
Oh, but I once had a job in a plumbing supply house. I wrote that down. I wrote down that I was summa cum laude.
No.
Okay.
All this stuff. I wrote down WNTN, professional broadcaster, and I had 2 resumes.
Did you have any? Yeah. Were you in any organizations in college?
No,
nothing.
But I talked about Key Club in high school. I made that.
Talk that up.
Yeah. I showed up for one meeting. So I get this job.
And yes, we all understand being young and padding out your resume to make it look as though you've accomplished something. We've all been there. I get that.
Oh, yeah. He made sure to write down 50,000 watt.
Yes.
For the station, which he didn't say 3,000 watt for WRNW.
No, not at all. At WRNW, turn it down. Now I got to go into the city every day, and I have to get a job. My father's like, you got to get a job, of course. And I wanted a job.
He was putting pressure on you?
Well, I put the pressure on myself. I mean, I got a college. He was, we got a college degree.
Well, I mean, he wasn't helping, saying take your time. He was like, hey.
he was being understanding. He felt bad, but I know under his breath he had to be saying somewhere. He said to me a couple of times, You got a communications degree.
Okay, let this one go a little bit. Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
This is just, you got to get a job. You don't, you shouldn't have your father telling you that, and you should have had your resume and things going out before that. Didn't everybody do that when they were about to graduate from college or something?
Peter Pansexual. Peter Pansexual was still thinking about going back to WellMed at this point.
Did anybody think of this mindset is just crazy to me. I'm sorry.
This is a book we'll have to go through sometime. It's called Peter Pan Syndrome. This is the actual book that came out in the 80s, and I leafed through it, and I found it so relevant. I mean, that's how I can say definitively that magical thinking is tied to our being Peter Pansexual, because this is where I got it. The guy says magical thinking is a trademark of someone with Peter Pan syndrome. Mm-hmm. And when I read this thing, I realized, oh my God, Howard is just a mediocre example of Peter Pan syndrome. It's not even exciting that this is he's stunted and wants everything done for him. And why should I have to find a job just because I'm not in school anymore, and so on?
Yes, he basically wants to be gifted a job without having done the interview, submitted a CV, put on a suit, got through the stress of, entering and saying, whatever, going through an interview, and so having to submit a reel, like a highlight reel or something of his last job or whatever, example of his live reads or something. Sam?
I don't even know how kids now do job interviews or anything. I watch like the crop of people that come up now or are in college, and it's so different. Like they're more towards the Howard thinking. They're less towards.
I presume,
right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've been saying for years, Howard Stern invented the year 2020 or 2021 or whatever year it is, because
it is.
The years have finally caught up to him.
That's not a good thing.
No.
All of these radio guys, they could be janitors, or you'll be competing with anyone can talk. You'll be competing with janitors, and you should have taken acting classes. I begged you to take a acting class or summer stock. You're wasting your time going to Dopey Wellmet with the camping, and I told you what to do. He was nervous for me. Yes, I mean, I was ready for a nervous breakdown. What am I gonna do?
Oh my!
How am I?
Okay.
That was actually good advice of Ben. Why don't you do summer stock? Why don't you get comfortable up on a stage in front of people? Why don't you get comfortable speaking publicly? Instead, you want to go screw around with 13-year-olds at a summer camp again and never leave childhood?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's great advice. That's great advice.
Ben was nothing but good advice, by the way, and good connections.
At the very least, get some jobs, whatever job experience you get, a real job for a couple months that, would have been more prevalent back then. Even whatever, when you're really young, it's a paper route. And when you get a little older, it might be a fast food joint. And then when you get a little older, it might be working at a record store or a shoe store or something, just whatever. Get your feet wet, so to speak, in the job market.
I find it. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
I was going to say, just really quickly, that even when it came to Howard taking this WRNW job, and I don't know if it's going to come up in audio clip, but Ben told Howard, take the job. Even if it doesn't pay well, it's like your grad school, and they're paying you to attend grad school. That is such a supportive father, rather than him go, no, don't waste your time on some low-paying dead-end job. Take the marketing job seriously, the advertising job seriously. I put my neck out on the line for you again. Instead, he's always looking for the positive spin on things.
Yep.
And, he never gets credit for that.
Nope.
Gonna get out of college.
Oh, sorry, Sam. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Ben's a good parent with good advice. You want to teach your kid and also how to interact in the world of business. And I teach my daughter too, like, you have to look at people when you shake hands and teach her. And she's 9, she's going to be 10. But these things are very important to teach kids how to navigate the world and how to act appropriately in certain situations. And Ben is giving really solid advice that Howard is just, where is my huge job? Because I did this thing that, if you listen to him with college, it's not like he even really wanted to do it. Everything was pushed for him. Yeah. His parents pushed it all.
And also bear in mind that Ben is a first-generation American with parents who don't even speak English. So they're not giving him advice on here's how you make it in America. I mean, this guy's a self-made guy, and imparting with enthusiasm on his son to follow, that is such a novelty, it seems to me, considering most people, I mean, Ben's parents, are street sweepers, basically, that kind of thing. They're not following a job where you get to sit down and play records. So, for him to be supportive of that, as he was of anything Howard showed interest in, speaks volumes about his character that you'll never hear Howard say about his character.
And that's unusual too, by the way, because most people from that generation wanted you to get up and do manual labor. They wanted you to work, Right. So for them to kind of just say, okay, we're going to support everything for you to be something different. And we do that for you. Not to accept in that advice and kind of just like, whatever, my dad was disappointed. No, your dad wants you to understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he instead of, he's like Chaz Palminteri, except he would have called it a Roosevelt tale. I mean, he just wanted to make it seem like, everything's happening to him. And it's almost like the Robin story. Her entire biography is Dorothy on the Yellow Brick Road and running into all kinds of, porn stars and, talking trees and, whatever. And so he would have you believe it's like this wild cast of characters. And okay, fine, whatever, mythologize your life as much as you want. But at some point be open, and he stopped being able to do that a long time ago. However, there is one clip, we won't play it, where he discusses, maybe you've heard, I'm sure you've heard it, Ben, where he discusses how his dad helped his brother-in-law, Ellen's husband, get a job selling cushions at Bloomingdale's or something, like basically commissioning his stuff, and how he said that was, you want to hear a good thing my father did? Because they asked him, Gary and Robin both asked, what did your dad do? Tell us about him. Tell us a story about him. And he said he actively went to Bloomingdale's, took an sample of the cushions, leather cushions or whatever that he made, and said, I want you to sell these things, and waited to meet the head of Bloomingdale's. And the guy said, sure, I'd love to sell these. How much? And And then
that's great.
It is a great story.
I remember that.
And then they ask, like, so it's, what's your real problem with your father? Well, why don't you? And then they go into, I know what the problem is. And he goes, well, what's that? He didn't hire you at his studio. Like he didn't give you a job.
No,
and
that's ridiculous. Ben didn't have the studio at that point.
No, he didn't. I don't. Well, no, he had gotten rid of it, hadn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was retired. He retired at a very young age.
55, something like that.
Yeah, which is unheard of. It just.
Yeah.
I mean, you are a tech billionaire nowadays if you retire at that age, and you probably wouldn't retire because you just go, I'm going to stay in the game. Yeah.
Anyway, I one day we'll go through that with Chicago Bob, because it's a good clip, and I'd like to know what his feelings are on it, because it's a little, there are a lot of odd silences there and uncomfortable silences. It's a really interesting clip. At any rate, let's finish this one off.
You get a job.
Did you have any idea what field you were going to attempt?
No, so I would walk into Manhattan every day. Everyone looked like they knew where they were going. And I had my briefcase, and I'd walk around the street with the New York Times looking at the want ad.
Did you go to interviews?
Well, you'd see these ads. They were intimidating. It says, self-starters, no losers need apply.
Oh,
geez. I said, well, I'm a loser. And I'm not a self-starter. I don't even know what that means.
Self-starter.
Self-starter,
I
no
hated
losers.
that term when people used to say that.
There are certainly two things he was not. He was one thing he was absolutely a king loser, and he was absolutely not a self-starter by any stretch. Sam?
It's interesting that Artie says he's not a self-starter, because as much as he's a defeatist in his self, he is a self-starter. It takes some gravitas to get off a union job that's a guaranteed pay, medical, whatever, dental,
everything,
and
benefits,
you're going to go into comedy. That's a self-starter.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder why it is so mysterious to him, the thought that at 9 a.m. on a Monday, people in New York City look like they have someplace to be, or look like they're going. Why else would they be there at 9 a.m? I mean, it's like not the fact that that's a novel thought to him. They all look like they knew where they were going. Yeah, why else would they be there?
Yeah. So I think the next clip is called "Hapeless Wiggy, the Media Buyer."
Well, he decided he would try. I discussed with him about working in New York radio, which wasn't feasible at the time because, you had really no commercial experience, and they weren't quick to open up a big station to someone in that capacity, and he never would have helped him in his career. So he went over to Button and Bowles and became a media buyer. And he did it well. They loved him.
He gave me my own office with two other guys. I had an office.
My own office with two other guys.
What?
That's just as good as I've eaten dinner with Donald Trump many times. Not in the same not at the same table. Love that clip.
Big desk, phone, got to wear a suit and tie every day. And my boss comes in the first day and he goes, okay, I want you to, he starts in with a calculator and he's printing out sheets and he goes, I want you to do workups on cost, CPM cost per thousands. Then I want you to call in Arizona, buy Arizona Diamondback something, baseball, football, whatever that is. Get Planters Peanut. I was on the Planters Peanut account. Get Planters Peanuts and blah, 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 blah. I went, oh my God. I turned to the guy next to me. I was in tears.
It must have been like the guy was speaking Aramaic to him.
This is the guy who claims he never cries. In fact, he cries anytime you give him any responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
A Planters Peanut account? Wah?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why he eats almonds to this day.
Yeah.
I'll help you.
Oh,
and he said, you know what? You know when you get an assignment in school?
Come on, that's the Blue Diamond account. Let's not get it.
You know what? Don't you get like, I don't know if you're this way, but when you get a challenge, there's something in me personally that's like, I'm not only going to do this challenge, I'm going to murder this challenge. I'm going to show you, you know?
Yeah.
That's
what he would claim he is.
Right. But listen to him. He cries and he's like, how am I going to get out of this Planters Peanut challenge?
Well, imagine being thrust into a job where you're required to use brain you don't actually have. There's a part of your brain's the size of a fucking Planters peanut, and they're asking you to do number crunching and sales, and you have no ambition. You have no get up and go. You have nothing in you that suggests you are a type A person whatsoever. Even though he'll go at one point when he does start getting into when he gets to Hartford, I think that's his first job after WNRNW. WCCC, I think, is the one. And they give him like a 6-day-a-week job. I mean, let's be honest, that sounded more of in line of, you're starting up, you're going to work like a dog, more than the WRNW job, which was just part-time. But he makes it sound like he was in the salt mine, the 24 hours a week.
Yeah. But that wasn't unusual. I mean, I remember in Illinois listening to this DJ Kevin Matthews. He would do 5 days a week, and then on Saturdays he would do a Saturday show. It was talk radio. I think that was not unusual.
Yeah.
I just find it hilarious that, anytime anybody gives something new presented to them, how you handle it says a lot about you. I think,
Yeah.
So
you don't panic, Sam?
No, I actually thrive on that shit. Like, I love getting something new thrown at me when it comes to assignments or anything else. And you just go, you're like, I'm going to figure this shit out. I'm going to do it and I'm going to figure it out. And something about that sort of atmosphere, I think, would be intriguing and exciting, not crying.
Well, to you, I mean, the analogy I'm going to use is like, okay, you look at a Rubik's Cube and you go, I got to solve this. He looks like a Rubik's Cube and he says, what did people do to these Lego? I mean, it's not a case of, and again, okay, he said many years he is an idiot, and we played infamously that clip about him being retarded and going to basic studies. But either way, the reason why I wanted these clips is to illustrate more. I believe he's telling the truth about how
same here
hapeless he was and how stupid he was and how he was ill-suited. But I just wish we had more of that going forward, because a lot of it is not it's not embellished. He gives it short shrift, in my opinion, compared to all the other great things he thinks he's done, especially once you get into the later years. Sam?
I think it tells a lot about how important the group was around him too, to make his success.
Big time.
If there wasn't those people, if there wasn't the Fred, the Robin, the Jackie, there'd be nothing.
Oh, no.
No way.
Pulling you in way over your head.
Yeah.
I was in way over my head. And the guy comes in and goes, I want you to draw a map of the country and plot out where we're going to...
How Planters is going to attack the country?
He goes, I want you to look up every Jewish newspaper in the country because Planters makes peanut oil and it appeals to Jews who are kosher. I go, yeah. And he goes, and then I want you to figure out cost per thousand divided by.
Oh. Divided by?
Like you've never heard of division before. Divided by?
What? The second he heard the word divide, he went into the fetal position.
Of course. Yeah. You have a calculator.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it.
You don't even have to do it shorthand.
Yeah.
I don't even have a pencil.
God damn.
Oh my
what
God.
comes next anyway after divided by?
This would have been a great assignment for him. You're Jewish.
Yeah.
Pick a map. Look up the most. You could look on a census.
Yeah.
What are the most populated Jewish counties? And fucking go hog wild and take a fucking calculator and do the math. I mean, what easier assignment could you possibly get?
Oh my Lord. I mean, yeah, you just check out any census and
Who
just go
doesn't
nuts.
know what a peanut is?
Yeah, I'm sure that they're providing him with the resources that he needs also.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
It's just that he's got very poor comprehension skills.
Yes.
And, he needs tutors for everything.
Yeah.
Could have got to jump on the Roadhouse Grill, Howard.
Yeah.
He did buy.
Sorry.
He's probably washing dishes in the break room all day just so that he could claim to be busy.
Scrubbing pots at an ad agency.
Isn't all this all very Seinfeldian? Of his adventures.
Yeah.
I mean, don't you picture George or Kramer in these situations?
But I picture George. I picture a total, say Vandalay.
Yes. You are aware Penske's interested in me. That kind of thing.
Your son's come home after wearing a suit all day and he's got dishpan hands.
Yeah. Or even the Kramer thing where I don't even know what I'm doing here. When he gets hired and he has no job there.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm doomed. They're gonna find out I don't know anything.
Cost per thousand.
I'm sitting there till 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night trying to finish these assignments like it's the SATs. I'm in over my head.
And what? Just because you went to college, you assumed you can do all this, work all this?
No, he said he had experience in marketing.
Oh, because of your lying.
I lied. I was doomed. I was in a panic. What am I going to do? This is a good job, but.
Okay, guys, 30 seconds more.
Why can't I be creative? I'm like, maybe I get a job copywriting or something.
Right, maybe another department is where you should be.
I had to start coming in on Saturdays to figure out my work that I couldn't do during the week. I'm sitting at the desk pounding the My mother looked at me. She goes, "What are you doing? You look green. Your skin is green." I go, "I'm sick. I don't know what to do." She goes, "What are you doing?"
I got a job, but it's killing me.
I explained my job. She goes, "You're a creative guy. What are you doing?" I go, "I don't know. I don't know."
Oh my God. He'd be like, in Mad Men, Don Draper, you picture like an ad agency. Jesus. Could you imagine? And his tasks are so Don Draper-esque assignments, like things that you would get this account. You have to, get the cigarette account, whatever.
I really,
you're not a creative
Well, it sounds
person.
like he was a media buyer, so he would be buying ads for their client to appear in media, meaning the local newspapers or whatever. But we want to make sure it goes in the right newspapers that's going to hit their target audience and make the most of this money.
Which is the easiest. It's not even creating the ad.
Right. And what all they're trying to do is figure out how is the money best spent. So we could go to this, we could go to this, and it should not be this insurmountable task.
No, God, no. I mean, it really is like, I think maybe for once I'm going to use the Photoshop I made of him as Will Hunting figuring out 1 + 1 on the chalkboard.
Right.
You
stump him at divided by 1.
Well, yeah.
Divided by.
Right, exactly. So this next clip is called "Never Trust a Pelican with 1 Foot Always Out the Door."
And I started going in on Sundays.
He didn't like it. So when we discussed it, I said, listen, there's no sense in starting a career. You don't want to be in something you don't like.
He hated it.
He hated it, so he
And
left.
when he would come home, he was very despondent. And I said to him, leave. This is not for you.
We gotta get out of this place. If it's the last thing we ever do.
Then I still listening.
A song synonymous with the Vietnam War. Is this worth the ad? The media buying was his Vietnam.
The napalm peanut planters, peanut palms.
But this really speaks to his resenting any job that expects a measurable performance out of him.
Oh, yeah.
So here's a task, it needs to be completed. And he resents that. He likes these immeasurable tasks where
guys,
my job is to entertain,
We need a Photoshop of him getting lifted off, the final in Saigon, the helicopter.
I think it would be better if he were one of the models in Apocalypse Now, getting the Playboy Playmates getting picked up.
And then the Citizen Kane ending is you see the math problem that stumped him, and it's like 25 divided by 5, and he just question mark everywhere.
He's got chalk dust all over his shoulders.
Yeah.
Man, I should have taken that radio job.
Sorry, what? Sorry, go ahead.
Ben's right. And he needs something vague. Everything has to be completely vague for him to succeed.
Well, yeah, that would later be worked into his contracts, meaning you cannot fire me because of low ratings.
Yes.
And same with AGT. I'm certain he had the 4-year contract where ratings cannot make an impact on them on this contract.
Guaranteed. Yep.
What a jackass I am. I told that to my dad. He goes, well, I know Ed Cosman over at WKTU. I go, yeah. WKTU was soft rock. It was this station.
Right.
Soft rock. I can do that.
Yes, you can.
The mellow sound of WKTU. I can do that. I figured. So my father says, I'll ask Eddie Cosman to play your tape for the program director. And there comes that tape again.
Whoa.
Back with the tape.
Coming around
Okay, a little bit more, guys.
the corner.
And so my father uses his influence because he knows a big guy in radio.
Yeah.
That's nice.
And he says, all right, he says, I'll get you a meeting with Ed Cosman. So I go into the city, WKTU, New York.
Big station.
Big station.
Where was it at the time? You remember?
Yeah, I don't even know. He's next to my father's recording studio. So, my father
and you
really isn't a
don't
jerk.
know.
And he's now getting he sees I'm desperate. He gets
Okay, let me play a little bit more.
the friend involved. That's the worst thing. So Cosman doesn't want to meet with me. He's a big-time radio general manager. He don't want to meet with me. And here I am walking. I walk in. I go, hi. He goes, look, I'm doing this as a favor for your father.
Oh, no.
There's 2 jobs in radio. Either you're in sales or you're on the air. Which is it? He goes, if you go on the air, you never make any money. He goes, if you want to be a salesman, I don't have any openings, but I'll keep you in mind.
Okay. I'd like to play a little bit more, but
look at that.
Go ahead, Ben.
That just shows you Ben Stern's pull, though. This guy wants nothing to do, and yet he's doing it for Ben Stern.
Mm-hmm.
He wants nothing to do with Howard.
Yeah. Which is going to lead into saying here at the tape, and he was awful, which is not surprising in the slightest. But we played the shit out of King Schmaltz, and then we played his WRNW stuff, and it really is milquetoast. It's shockingly awful. Yeah. So
you go out and get some experience, and then come and talk to me. Like, I don't want to be a salesman. That salesman sounds scary to me. Like, I'd actually have to.
You'd already called the rabbi. You knew.
Yeah, I don't have that ability. So I give him the tape. He says, I'll play it for Larry Miller, the program director. Larry Miller was the buzz in radio back then. He was the guy who developed soft rock for KTU. He introduces me to Larry Miller. I go, hi. Cosman goes, I want you to listen to this tape and call this kid and tell him whether or not you'll hire him.
The minute he said he was scared, Sam, I had to laugh. I knew you would.
Oh, God. It's like the salesman, the Thriller video. She's like being attacked on the couch.
Yeah.
But I was watching a college campus thing on YouTube earlier today, and the big thing is always to say, I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe with the speaker coming. I don't feel safe with this or that. And that's why I say again, Howard invented 2022. Here he is. You want to be a salesman? I don't feel safe. being a salesman.
No, it's like I picture Halloween costumes, a bunch of well-dressed Brooks Brothers suits guys in fucking briefcases.
and Howard in a panic room. Yeah, being surrounded by all these sartorial-looking guys.
I go home. I'm calling Larry Miller every day. I never heard from him. Finally gets on the phone. He goes, look, you're horrible. You're not working at WKTU. Radio's not for you.
Jesus.
Oh, it was a nightmare.
You're like 0 for 6 at this point.
You had some nerve calling them back when they weren't calling you.
In the meantime, my father then calls in another favor from a guy. You know who the guy is.
Oh, yeah.
Roy Eaton.
Mm-hmm.
He worked at Benton Bowles, the same average.
Okay, so his dad is doing whatever he can to get his retarded son into the workforce. But he's the asshole.
You know that Ben knows Howard is terrible.
Yes.
Ben has worked with professional voice artists. He knows what a good quality sounding voice is, a good delivery is, and so on. Good read. His son has none of that, and he's still putting his neck out there and saying, "Can you meet my son?" I mean, that shows you how faithful he was to his son.
Yeah,
he wasn't saying, "I'm not going to go and risk my friendship with this guy, risk my, I don't ask for favors. You want me to ask this favor of this guy? You're not good enough." That's what he could have done.
Oh yeah.
But he didn't.
He's the Hunter Biden of the Stern family.
Yeah. Right.
The nepotism.
Yep.
Advertising agency I'm working at.
You're at Benton Bowles when he calls Roy.
He called Roy because I wanted to get into something creative, and Roy was in charge of. He was the music director at Benton Bowles, and he's going to maybe give me a job in the creative side of things. Things were getting real bad at the advertising job. Finally, I walked in. I quit. They go, "You giving notice?" I go, "No. I got to get out of here."
Your notice is now.
And they were pissed.
Yay!
Okay, so just like that.
This is the beginning of his always screwing over his employers.
Yes.
Always
100%.
leaving on bad terms.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Getting in on a favor and leaving them in the lurch. Congrats.
Oh God. One of my brother's brother-in-law, his wife's brother, quit a job one time by writing on a handkerchief, "I quit so-and-so," and leaving it on the cash register. And then it was a hot dog place. So then he took about 100 frozen hot dogs, like the ones he liked from the freezer, put them on his bike and went home.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, there are ways to leave a job and there are certain ways you don't leave a job. And burning bridges in that industry, in any industry, is just like, not just the karma aspect, but it's New York. I mean, you can get a shitty name pretty quickly.
Yeah. I don't know if it was I don't know enough to know if it was standard courtesy back then to give 2 weeks notice. But it's really unthinkable to just go, I'm just leaving. That's all.
And Robin did the same thing with when she was in Harrisburg. She left them high and dry without. She goes, "Fuck this! I'm going to another place. That's your problem."
But we gave you a chance. That's your punishment for giving me a chance.
That's completely right.
The day he went in to tell them that he was leaving, they kept him in the office for over 2 hours to try to convince him to stay, but he was leaving.
One more song.
That very day, I get a call from Benton Bowles, the whole creative department. They're going to hire me based on Roy Eaton's suggestion.
The whole creative department called him
to work in their film division.
Ooh.
This is a big break.
Okay, a little bit more.
I'm going to get you a slow job. You're AV guy, like AV guy in high school.
At the bottom, you're going to be pushing a cart.
Well, if they have a meeting with a client, I'm the guy who cues up the tape and all this kind of stuff.
You hit the button and change the slides, whatever.
Yeah, but at least I'm all excited. I go in for my job. I'm on there the first day. They give me my assignment to show me equipment I need to learn to work and all this stuff. They call me into an office and they go, "Did you just quit this company?" I go, "Well, not really." They go, "You didn't give any notice, did you?" I go, "No."
Oh, so he was JD?
Yeah,
more or less.
Yeah. It can explain why he so identifies with JD.
Oh yeah.
Not only did they have a similar job, but I mean that would have been Howard's life if fame hadn't intervened.
Oh, totally.
No, they go, "You're out of here."
Oh,
we can't imagine that. I blocked all this out, come to think of it.
Wow. Yeah, you never told us you were hired at Benton and Bowles and then fired on the same day.
I was so humiliated. They said, leave now.
Wow.
And I had to go to Roy Eaton because he was my father's friend. And I said, thank you for recommending me. He goes, I understand that based on my recommendation, I hired you and you left here with no notice. I go, I'm terribly sorry. He goes, I look bad. I go,
Oh.
Everyone looks bad for recommending.
Everyone. Roy, Ben.
Ben.
Well, fuck them. Fuck them.
Yep.
No.
That's going, Dad.
Not half as bad as I look.
Oh, no wonder you're still doing favors.
And then
for
my
him.
father's like, I hope nothing bad happens to Roy. He did me a favor. Now I'm like, I'm
Now you're getting everybody into trouble.
It's horrible.
Right now, at a young age, you're just crazed with stress.
Fuck the stress. He is a
Because
piece
you
of shit.
caused the
Yes.
stress. This is self-induced stress.
What enabling by Artie for you is the takeaway. No, you screwed everybody, and you got a little bit of instant karma.
Mm-hmm.
And you're more worried about that the inconvenience it caused you.
Yes,
He just wanted to skate away like a slithering piece of shit.
And his first instinct is to lie. Did you just quit our company? Not really. I mean, it's all so Costanza.
Sort of. What?
That's on par. I'm trying to think of there's a Clark. I don't know if did I tell this story? Clark Gable was looking for an agent back in the day, and there's this guy Charlie Gold. He was a little agent somewhere in Beverly Hills, and they went to ball games. They met. They just kind of like tried to hit. They were hitting it off, and Clark Gable goes to Charlie Gold's office with just a little secretary. It's a really small place. And he goes, you know what, Charlie, I like this place. It's not ostentatious. It's really quiet here. And, I think we'd really get along. Tell me, are you Jewish? And Charlie Gold, he kind of pauses, looks around and goes, not necessarily. I just love covering all bases in a situation like this. He screws this up. Not only does his dad look like a shithead, the place that hires, they're wasting time, and the buddy who's done him a favor looks like a shithead. So there really is no he doesn't sound like, okay, he says he's embarrassed. I don't think he gave a fuck either way who he inconvenienced or who he put out. No fucking way. Guys, going back forward in time, he's finished or he's sort of still trying to transition from WRNW, Briarcliff Manor, and working his way to get to the job he takes in Hartford, WCCC. So this clip is called Stern Endears Himself to Clients.
Another outlet in which Howard invested his nascent creativity was in the delivery of live commercials and the production of recorded spots. Howard really worked hard for our clients, said Barbara Freeman, who was employed in WRNW's sales and traffic departments. A local bakery expressed its thanks by making Howard Stern cannolis, iced and decorated to depict him accurately with eyeglasses, curly hair, and big nose. The cheese wheel responded to his use of the owner in the store's commercials by sending over spreads of bagels, lox, and cheeses. Still, these were baby steps in Howard's development. The more daring radio was being practiced by Joe from Chicago, who hosted the show that followed Howard's midday shift.
And so we're on page 39 for anybody following along, and we're at the middle, just the third paragraph, more or less. And Sam, did you want to read the...
I did want to say this, that they left out of it. They said, when he said the cheese wheel responded to his use of the owner in the store's commercials by sending over spreads of bagels, lox, and cheeses, then they say, quote, "We ate very well because of Howard," end quote. Freeman added, which is interesting because you think of all the gets that Howard had over his career and how much he disliked people getting something from these freebies.
Yeah,
I
even
mean,
after the summit.
We can remember how much he despised anybody getting anything, not even a fucking bagel, for his staff meeting. So that quote really
what this really reveals to me though is Howard really separates himself from the rest of the talent, because that's where the separation is, by being interested in and kissing the asses of the advertisers, which is something that the talent, or in editorial it would be the edit side is one side, the advertising is another side, usually don't cross. And when advertising does try to cross over and say, hey, can you do this or that? It's usually, crossed arms. No, we're not doing that. Mm-hmm. So it's rare on the ad side when you go, wait a minute, the talent is actually kissing my client's ass, bringing them on, seeing what they want and all that kind of stuff. So Howard from the very beginning made it clear, I'm not on the side of the talent. I'm on your side. And that has carried through his entire career.
But on that end, it is, although that's true, that's also something that helped elevate him, because corporate money talks bigger than the game of on-air talent, right? So if you have corporate sponsors that are, paying for airtime, and you got a guy that is going to present it in some sort of way that's going to make it desirable, and they are going to continue to pay for airtime more so, and then they're going to bring on other sponsors. So Howard was building this sort of, I guess, almost pyramid scheme from his career to their sponsorships and businesses.
But it also brings to mind like the fact that later on in his career, and not even that much later, let's say even a decade later, he was notoriously awful to meeting with ad people or meeting with sales.
Well, once he didn't need him anymore.
Yes. Yeah.
That actually. They're in this book they talk to an advertiser who said that they were so surprised that when they sat with Howard, he had questions about their products, that his strategy usually is to weave it in conversationally at first.
Yes.
And then slowly over time, lo and behold, they're actually an advertiser. And if you remember, he actually just did that with Nutrisystem. He actually just started talking about Nutrisystem one day. And then they were an advertiser. He did the same thing with New Balance recently. Just talking about New Balance one day, and then or Skechers. Sorry.
But
it also changed. It changed the whole game though when social media came about, and people started having to say "paid by," because before you didn't have to say that you were paid by. So you genuinely thought when you were listening to these ads, which are ads, they aren't just just something that comes off like naturally. These were ads, but Howard didn't have to say they were ads.
Well,
so
that's right.
That's how he got away with doing all of this. And that's what built a lot of him up to, I think, his whole career from doing these fake ads.
Well, then, until it became, I guess, illegal to endorse a product without, and then there were some lawsuits involved later on, with his name involved, with like personal fantasy cards or something. Like he had Pam Anderson in the studio and said, "Oh, Pamela, have you ever used these?" And all of a sudden, that was the ad. Kerry talked about it when we were still at RG, and he did a show, and basically because they were doing the whole theme was. Lawsuits in the Stern world, and that was one of them, and I found that fascinating because that's part of the radio industry you don't get to hear about, and certainly he's not something he's going to talk about himself. Yep.
He actually complained about this. I remember it was a Kraft macaroni and cheese ad.
Yes, Drew Barrymore.
Yes, and he complained about this, saying this is an ad, who is falling for this, and was really upset, and that really blew my mind because I was like, dude, you built a whole career on doing this.
And I don't think for a second that was actually an ad. Just her saying that sometimes she rocks the Kraft macaroni and cheese.
That's she just says whatever. She really, I don't think, was making an ad either.
If you go on a late night show and you said I was crying, I had to put Kleenex, I had to wipe my nose with Kleenex or something. Is that a Kleenex ad, or is it so universally known as tissue? Most people don't say tissue; they might say Kleenex. You know what I mean? It's become ubiquitous. At any rate, so later on, then it becomes. Yeah, I have a hard time. We couldn't get him to meet with sponsors. Chiasano said you're difficult when it comes to getting sponsorship money, and it really was about. I think at that point, I'm not getting enough dividends from the live reads. I'm not getting enough of a percentage. I need more.
That could be
him being a dick about that.
Well, I think it became, once he built this acumen for doing this sort of thing, and then he was elevated to this certain status of success, he doesn't just want to be paid. He just doesn't want to be paid like a fee, you know? He wants a piece of the pie, like an actual piece of companies' pies.
Yeah, well, there's the advertising buy-in of you can advertise on the show, or for a premium, Howard will read the ad copy himself. Yeah. Now, I think Howard, like you just suggested, probably between he and Buckwald said, you deserve a much bigger cut if you're going to be reading these ads than what you're getting. But the foundation of all that is Howard crosses the line that other DJs don't want to cross, which is I'll be the friend to the advertiser. And, it's a kind of a silly thing. It makes sense from a business perspective. I mean, the advertisers are what's paying your salary. Yes. So, you should be thankful that they have advertising and so on. And you shouldn't be scoffing and going, I don't meet with advertisers or whatever, because, it comes with the job.
It's Howard, a business.
Yes. And Howard, not being a true artsy guy like these other DJs were, had no problem with that, and they recognized that in him right away. That this is not a guy. This is a company man.
That's right. He'll lube up and take it as far as we want. Yep.
Podcasting was totally, lucrative from ads. So when it started, you wanted those sponsorship spots. You wanted. You hoped that somebody would sponsor your podcast, whether it be like Blue Chew or whatever. Sure. You heard a lot of the similar ads played on Rogan in the beginning, or Ari Shafir's podcast, or stuff like that. And, so I think that it is he did link those relationships together of like that being important. And it is, but it also was back then, as Ben said, you could tell you're a hapeless idiot who sees what the bottom line is more than what your talent is.
Well, I mean, he knew the way he was going to make it there was to be a company guy and do whatever the fuck they said, because he was useless as a DJ. Didn't know what music to play, sounded like shit, but they just needed a warm body. They needed a warm body to fill up an air shift and do some grunt work and no sir, 3 bags full.
But he saw how he could leverage his position by being a promoter of the bottom dollar.
Yeah, and ultimately
you got to give him credit for that.
Yeah, and then
I do.
Yacht Rock.
I will say you would give him credit. You wouldn't say he was an artist. You wouldn't say he was talent. You wouldn't say
it was shrewd.
Yeah, anything. I mean, you would just say he was a malleable, loyal company man.
That's right.
That what pays the bills is you being nice to the cheese wheel, so I'll be nice to the cheese wheel.
That's right.
That's right.
That was it.
So Joe Pychek, Joe from Chicago, he was the one that this is like an early sort of early influence of Howard, but I don't know that you'll ever hear. He'll talk about it here and there, I believe. But either way,
he gave him the name Howard.
That's right. Joe looked on during a broadcast interview with Al Jarreau as the singer gave a dazzling display of percussion by patting out a rhythm on his own kneecaps. Joe crafted audio theater out of his wide choices in music, comedy recordings such as those by the Firesign Theater, and studio sketches. There were dramatizations of the weather forecast. Joe played a robot that pondered meteorological readings supplied by weatherman Phil Rodent, newsman Ted Bonnet, who pretended to be speaking from a wind-torn mountaintop while being swept away by the Gulf Stream. And now here's the next clip, which is Joe stuck out. Howard wanted to stick out.
Howard watched because Joe stuck out. He wanted to stick out too.
Okay. So it says here, Howard would enter the studio and ask, how do you guys do that? Bonnet recalled. He was still in his pupa stage. He was still finding himself. And then it goes into, we're page 40 now, guys, if you're following along. The impressionable side of Howard gave management the sense that he could be turned into a stabilizing influence among his more rebellious peers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is somebody, it reminds me of, like, if you're in a union and you want a management mouthpiece, This is somebody that they would implant
He's
into your contract talks.
Right.
You want somebody that's a management mouth.
He couldn't be a liaison for that staff because they were already too established. It's us versus them, so that staff has to go.
Mm-hmm.
But going forward, you'll be the guy who makes it known the advertisers rule.
Yep.
And also in the movie, as opposed to the way he paints it in Private Parts, where he's pig vomit, which is actually a combination of people, or pig virus, whatever they call it. I think they call him pig vomit in the movie. He's the corporate. He's trying to be anti-corporate or anti-establishment, but he would be the guy in the suit in this situation, and could say, "Listen, if he had the balls and was really honest, would say, I was that person. I understand that situation."
So we could sit here and say, like I did, that it's kind of smart on Howard's part, especially if he doesn't have talent, to go this route, right?
Sure.
But the domino effect of what this does on free speech, what this does on actual, that's the part where it really, really fucks things up. Because it hurts. It hurts talent, and it hurts the freedom of speech and creativity in DJs worldwide. If then you realize, we need on-air talent that's going to kowtow to this.
Mm-hmm.
We need on-air talent that's going to promote this. We need these corporate hack management mouthpiece, fake free speech motherfuckers. That's what he did. That's what he did. So it was, in general, a bad thing. A selfish bad thing.
A lot of times these dominoes are in the interest of appeasing advertisers or something. Then we'll do this, and then and an industry changes. You might be like, we'll make some movies to babysit your kids, and then suddenly that's the only movies that are made. And so on, because those are the ones that make money, and it is a business, and you understand they want to make money. They're not trying to change your life.
No, and they're not trying to reinvent the wheel, for sure.
Right. And so the disc jockey who no longer is the dirtbag stoner who you can't speak to, but is now the permed guy in the turtleneck and willing to do whatever it takes. That's Howard's that new generation of malleable guys who are on the side of the advertiser.
It reminds me a lot of the fourth state of journalism, where it was, you got these coffee drinking middle class people who want to go against the man, and they want to stick up for the voices that aren't heard. And then all of a sudden, this is a bunch of kids. How could they afford to live in all these places? They're trust fund kids that are going to journalism school. And instead of being, an antagonist, they're on the side of.
Yep.
And they want that seat next to power. They don't want to rally against power.
I was getting ready to say, related somewhat to this. Have you ever heard anyone on the talent side, like Howard is supposed to be, more friendly with the suit side than Howard is? I mean, he knows every studio executive. He takes lunches with every studio exec. I mean, Ted Sarandos. He's giving them, birthday party invitations, and he's meeting with Bob
Iger.
Yeah, Bob Iger and Brad Gray and all these other guys. And people, to the point where like Letterman would be like, "You meet with these people?" I mean, you're supposed to go, they are not in the same world as us.
That's right.
I'm sure that's what his fellow DJs were saying too. You sit with cheese wheel people? Why? Yeah. And he's always felt more comfortable being the double agent. Like, I can talk to these people. If this was the union, I can talk to those people and trust me.
Yep. And so the next clip goes into that, and it's called "Goodbye to Joe, Hello Corporate Sellout Wiggy."
After Lake Champlain Broadcasting announced in June 1977 a plan to sell the station for $450,000, the company released Barnett, who had hired Howard. Joe from Chicago became the new program director. However, after the sale was closed, Joe was axed and Howard succeeded him as program director, graduating to a $12,000 annual salary.
Okay, so right around that middle part of page 40, it completely omits some of the write up here. So the two new owners doing business as WRNW Inc. sought to attract a wider audience by imposing a tighter rein on the music format than they thought Joe could implement. Because Howard did not display a burning passion for WRNW's progressive rock sound, he seemed a more pliable, that's a key word, guys, pliable choice for the mission. And then it says here, Howard also got along with Yubi, I think it's pronounced Yubi Levin, the Israeli-born sales manager who survived the transfer of the station, becoming general manager under the new owners. I wanted to make the station more profitable, Levin recalled. That hard rock format was not the way to go. It was successful for kids, but at one point I couldn't take it anymore. Howard and I were the same along the same line about that. He was not a burned out rock and roll type. I got along with him very well because he wasn't like the others. He knew exactly what I wanted. So this goes into the next one, Rebel Rebel My Ass.
Howard's colleagues point to the sale of WRNW as the beginning of the station's end as an outlet for progressive rock. Unanimously recalling how much they liked Howard personally, they also cite his elevation to program director as evidence that he was essentially colorless and non-combative, in Jekyll and Hyde contrast to the radio personality of today.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is speaking to the exact point we were saying. You're a management mouthpiece. You're a double agent.
Yeah.
You're going to
Tom
pretend.
Chiasano.
You're going to, what do we want? When do we want it? And you're going to be that person that's going to pretend that you're giving me what we want, but you're really going back to the other side and talking out the other side of your mouth.
Yeah, it had to have been strange for these people. More talented than Howard, far more knowledgeable about music than Howard, far more passionate about radio than Howard, far better at radio than Howard. To see him come in and go, this guy is terrible. And 6 months or so go by and suddenly he's at the top of the radio side. This guy with no experience, really.
Right.
I've pointed out before that they, there was the money, they go into this in the history of Howard Stern. The money was, the radio station was set up before as almost like a money loser. It was okay to just lost money.
That's right.
It was not meant to be as a profitable endeavor. And then they sold it to to these two Jewish guys who wanted it to be profitable. So I've pointed out before that I make a point of pointing out that they're Jewish because Howard has made a point about pointing out how much he likes working with Mel Karmazin because Mel Karmazin's Jewish. He points that out whenever he leaves WNBC. I do think he probably plays up that he's Jewish and that the others aren't whenever it comes down to, look, I understand this is a business. I understand, these guys are not like us and so on.
It's possible. It's very possible.
It's possible. Yeah, I would not be surprised. And I have to point this out. I don't mean that as any kind of judgment or anything like that. I'm just saying he probably used whatever resources he could, including, we're both also
sort
Jewish.
of like kin.
Yeah.
Yes,
like it's I'm a yid too. Like let's break bread.
Suddenly he's showing up wearing a yarmulke and all that kind of stuff. But in any case, I mean, they noticed right away that he's malleable. Anyway, that had to have been surprising because you think that they're going to give it to the guy who's most talented or the guy who's most interested in radio and most experienced or most connected in the music scene or whatever. And no, they give it to the guy who's most malleable.
Or you see this as too, what I think is the start of, oh my gosh, talent is no longer, it seems like these strongholds of radio talent that are really just trying to say, no, we're going to play what we want to play. We're trying to bring in this progressive rock. We're trying to introduce things. We don't care if it makes money because this is good shit. And eventually it's going to catch on. It's these creatives. And it seems like Howard putting his flag in the ground of saying, meh, I'm going to be a double agent. That totally changed the game to where it is now, where you have to be these people pleasing, not not against the man type of people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if he hadn't been that type, or if the station hadn't sold, who knows? I mean, how different his life would have been. I mean, it's the way life unfolded around him has pushed him in new directions and given him things. I mean, we always hear about the $96 a week, but we don't hear that in 6 months he was already moved to the very top position in radio in that station. There was no higher position. We also don't hear
about the connections. We don't hear about the ad jobs and the Ben calling in favors. None of that.
Right.
Well, it's certainly not emphasized enough when he does this whole retrospective look back into the kaleidoscope that is his life, and how much Ben actually did for him. And all we're hearing now, because at one point I was curious, what would it be like when his parents die? Like, is he going to be in the fetal position, or is he going to go the opposite direction? Like he's literally going to piss on them while they're dying, and when they're dead. Yeah.
It truly is remarkable, though. Here he is 6 months out of college, basically, or I mean, 6 months in the workforce, a 23-year-old guy. And suddenly he's now the general manager, or what is he? The
program director.
Program director.
Yeah.
Turning down jobs.
Which sounds very prestigious. It's, and it only happens because these new owners come in and they say, who's going to obey and who's not going to obey. Keep the guy who obeys, get rid of the rest.
Ben, do you have the book on you?
Yes.
And by the way, when you say he doesn't obey or obey who's going to be the guy, that's the thing that pisses me off the most is his own narrative is he was the guy that didn't obey. He's the rebel.
Right. Of course.
So why we do this one especially is because that anti-hero rhetoric that he proclaims is such bullshit.
Yeah, complete. Yeah. So Ben, if you go to page 41 at the top, right after, right where Joe from Chicago talks about him in quote marks, we had. Could you read that paragraph and the next one, those two paragraphs?
Yeah, we had caused a ruckus to make an impact, Joe said, but the new owners wanted to follow a predetermined format. Howard didn't have strong feelings about it one way or another. He was not entrenched at the station. He was not a programmer per se, nor did he have a powerful show. He was a mellow jock. That was all a quote. Yeah. Then on the next, no quote. On one key point, however, Howard and Levin disagreed. Howard wanted to remain on the air, even though, according to Levin, he sounded horrible. I didn't see any potential for him whatsoever. Levin relented only because Howard insisted on retaining an air shift before he would accept the programming job. And that's only because Ben Stern made him insist that.
Yes, absolutely.
So we got Ben's advice superseding again and helping. And then we also have the truth about how he didn't care if he was a bad boy as much as he cared about keeping his voice on air regardless of the situation.
That's right.
And keep in mind too, at this point, at this point, how they had started to warm up to Howard a little bit. They had invited him to house parties. Howard was in love with Meg, even though he was engaged to Allison.
Yeah, right.
He had started to, they had teased him and, given him advice, given him, loosen up on the air and so on.
But they liked him.
They liked him. And, he goes to one of their house parties. And remember, there's a conversation about, could I ever get TM and get my mom to levitate off the ground?
Yes, that's coming up.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So in any case, he was starting to befriend. I mean, these people were showing that they're not outsiders who are like, you can't join our cool club.
That's right.
They were starting to welcome him in, and suddenly he's like, goodbye.
Right.
I stand to get promoted. Goodbye.
Right. It's funny. It's because in the 1970s, I'm thinking of the punk movement, which was a lot. It became as in some ways as formulaic as any other type of music, but in the genre, like homosexuality was completely acceptable. Men, women, it didn't matter. There were no real gender barriers in punk in terms of the audience, and definitely in the bands at the time. So it was actually
look at documentaries on that bar EBGBs or whatever.
CBGBs.
CBGBs, sorry. In New York City.
Yeah.
And you look at those scenes, it's gender fluid across the map. I mean,
That's
you
right.
can't tell a girl from a boy and a boy from a girl in some of those.
Yeah. Wayne County was trans on stage. Jane County, when eventually became Jane County, yeah.
I'm sure it's a huge regret to Howard that he didn't go. These guys used to go to CBGBs and invite Howard, and he wouldn't go with them.
I believe
he's not interested in music. He's scared of the city, scared of the scene.
Oh, yeah. And so the next clip is called Seals and Croft Didn't Seem to Make It Onto the Private Parts soundtrack. I wonder why.
Could you imagine Could you imagine not taking an invite there and seeing like Blondie or something? I mean, like, what?
Yeah, at the heyday.
While continuing to do a 4-hour show each day, Howard steered WRNW toward softer rock.
Okay.
Fred Schreier, one of the new owners, found Howard to...
So 1 sec. I got to go into this. So that's part of the book. And then it says you still had some freedom to choose, but instead of the Sex Pistols or James Gang, you were now playing Seals and Crofts, Carole King, and the other singer-songwriters. We called Bruce Figler, a disc jockey who had worked in the wee hours. The hard sounds of The Who and the Rolling Stones were all but eliminated.
So you were playing You Got a Friend?
So and Howard started to come across like an ever so serious program director and cheerleader. There has been a complete void in covering any kind of local issues, everything from local government to happenings in the schools, just taking calls, speaking to people, finding out what Westchester's needs are. He told a local freelance writer for the New York Times in 1978. That's our edge. That's the difference.
Yeah, okay. I gotta tell you that that guy, the guy saying radio needs to be local, is the same guy Howard fights all the time saying they said they couldn't syndicate my show. It had to be local. They had to talk about local news, local school closings, local. That's you. So when you're on the side, when you're coming up, you're the guy who says it has to be local. As you're trying to expand and make more money, you go, fuck these people who say it needs to be local. But that's you.
Yeah.
Yes. And on top of it, too, when he says, finding out what Westchester really needs. If anybody knows what Westchester is, it ain't CBGBs. It's not, it's not that scene. So
it ain't the Dead Boys.
So what they were trying to do, what DJ should have done, like these people who were there, you're bringing a scene into that suburban, you're bringing that upper crust community into a scene, which is what your job should be as an on-air talent, not promoting so much of the boring.
Right. Yeah. Well, those guys had a sort of fantasy job as well because they were not, ratings weren't measured. When it's 3,000 watts, you're not measured. So, the only measure is, can we get in more, are people willing to pay to advertise on us? That's really the only measurement of success. And so if they say, there's this new format called AOR, called soft rock, and people are willing to spend money on this. Whereas, we're getting the cheese wheel now, we might be getting Cheesecake Factory later, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's enticing, So it's all business in the end. I mean, however romantic we want to make it, it's all business in the end. And and Howard did understand that then.
Yep.
Be one of the most capable and young men on the staff. Very pleasant and always very cooperative. The right man for the job.
Okay, so now we're on page 42, guys, and this is the next paragraph. It's completely omitted. It just says radio. A few months later, after he became the program director, a description of the station and radio guide, a bi-monthly publication, reflected the station's more serious demeanor. WRNW is a sophisticated rock format with a musical mix that includes the best in contemporary music as well as a combination of outstanding albums of the past. Howard broadens the musical spectrum with the emphasis on rock from oldies to new wave and sprinklings of jazz, soul, funk, and folk. I'm sure it was mostly fucking folk. Let's be honest. And it says here, he tempered his direction of WRNW's overall sound. He did not interfere with the other jocks because he didn't give a fuck about them and he didn't give a fuck about the music.
Yes.
The ones who asked him for input were told, "You sound great. Don't worry about it." He wouldn't have listened. any more than he listens to your movie when you come in to plug it, or your album when you've come in to plug it. He wants to hear a cover. He wants to talk about you with the movie you did 20 years ago. That's it.
Also, he couldn't have imparted any advice. He's terrible himself.
No, that's right. Next clip, guys, is called Allison Begins Her Long Road to Hell with Satan.
As Allison completed her master's degree in social work, the pair planned their wedding. In marked contrast to the equal opportunity offenses against religions that Howard later would commit on the radio, the choice of settings could not have been more reverent and traditional. Temple Ochabi Shalom, which means lovers of peace, founded in 1842, was the first Jewish congregation in Massachusetts. On June 4th, 1978, Howard and Allison entered the temple under an inscription that reads, "My house shall be called a house of prayer for all people." They were both 24 years old.
I love that. I love that it was the House of Peace. Meanwhile, after 9/11, he was the one saying, "Let's bomb a random Muslim country."
Also, they left this out. They said was the first Jewish congregation in Massachusetts, but then they said, and the second oldest in New England. So we're basically talking, you're talking old money. You're talking old, traditional, everything. When it comes to that,
it said it was founded in 1842.
This isn't some happenstance of where you're deciding to get married. This is
no.
everything.
Allison's father, I'm sure, paid for everything. He was the president of a successful company, a vacuum company, if I remember right.
I believe so.
Yeah. So
you did everything right.
Yes.
Yeah. And the next clip, guys, is called Wiggy Meets His First Robin Quivers.
Maybe it was the love in his life, but Howard gained confidence as his programming stint progressed. Barbara Malmet, hired as news director in 1978, became his first Robin Quivers, as he commented on stories in her newscasts during the morning show they did together. Colleagues recall his broadcast from the Westchester premiere of Sgt. Pepper's
Sorry, guys.
Lonely Hearts Club Band. Although only a few people turned out to see the widely panned film, Howard stirred them to such a whooping frenzy that it sounded to WRNW listeners as if there were thousands.
Okay, now, hold on. Sam, I would like you to read what's missing from the audiobook, and that is the third paragraph on this page where it says long accustomed to.
Okay.
This is pretty telling.
Long accustomed to bending his 6'5" height through doorways, a giant among smaller people, he took advantage of WRNW's cramped quarters by reaching out and pinching other men's nipples when they had to squeeze past him in tight spaces. He also joked about flatulence, especially his own. Years later, he reveled in the memory of the time that two women from the station fled his farts at a local motel during the night that he and several other staffers split the cost of a room during a snowstorm. What's more, Howard bragged about his hefty size of his bowel movements, going so far as to leave the toilet unflushed and insisting that production director Jeff Levinson go peek at his output.
Okay, so it's revolting. Either way, the next clip is called Mr. Gould Seems to Avoid All the Gay Stuff on this page for some reason.
He was always engaged in some form of self-denigration, said Jeff Levinson, who collaborated with Howard on many commercials. He seemed wildly uncomfortable in his own body. Gross as some of Howard's gestures were.
Oh, sorry, before I go into that, could you read the paragraph about that Meg Griffin, the next one, Ben?
Oh, I'm sorry. I closed my book. What page?
Oh, I'm sorry. Page 43, right after, it's a second last paragraph.
Okay, disc jockey Meg Griffin.
Yeah.
Disc jockey Meg Griffin. To see him back then was like seeing a Beavis and Butthead nerd kind of a guy. He had thick glasses and was much heavier. His short hair was like Brillo. It was a real unfortunate look.
He may have dwelled on them in order to lance larger anxieties about his physical awkwardness. He was like a comedian who secretly cries behind his laughter. His keen interest in his plumbing system may have been his unconscious way of jettisoning heavier baggage so that he could more easily struggle with managerial responsibilities. He was an anxiety-ridden guy, Levinson added. Life made him anxious, whether it was the boss coming in today or the commercial reading he had to do at 2 o'clock. Howard had yet to figure out a way to package his neuroses and sell them on the radio, but he had learned how to cope with stress.
Yep.
It said, they left this out. Commercial reading he had to do at 2 o'clock. All sorts of things made him nervous. And what this goes back to what Ben said. Any responsibility makes Howard nervous. Anything.
Yep. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Whether it be this innate shit that anybody knows that they have to do every day. I mean, could you imagine getting up in the morning and you realize you got to start your car and you're having a fucking anxiety attack because you got to leave your house, you got to start your car, or you have to make breakfast? That makes you nervous. That would be the same fucking thing. Like, you got to do a commercial read at 2 o'clock.
just like you did yesterday.
Yep.
I mean, what?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes hand in hand with what Chicago Bob has told us about NPD. They hate responsibility. They want to act like the god of all they survey, but they don't actually want to do and make the decisions necessary in certain positions of power. Yeah, Sam.
This goes in line with. So imagine how much he dreads that sort of, nothing of a responsibility. Think about when it comes to a responsibility of having a family, when it comes to raising children, when it comes to having a marriage, like
taking care of his parents, every aspect of his being.
That has to crush him. That's why he runs away from it all.
Well, the thing is, he loves to delegate and resents having to pay the people he delegates to.
That's right. But
like
also hates
doing it.
But also hates having to do any kind of work delegating for that purpose, because that also gives him responsibility.
Right.
Like if I chose you to do this and you're fucking up, I'm the idiot. So it's more like, look, just make it happen. Every time there was a problem with Robin, he'd tell Gary, look, just make it work. Instead of addressing the real problem, which he did eventually confront her in the early Robin nutty days, which have continued. Sim?
Well, that's why I contest right now. Sirius is not happy with him. That's why I think that Jennifer Witz, whatever, who's taken over Sirius, and he makes comments and offhanded bits about her or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's because she's putting responsibility on him, and this person isn't going back to work. He's not producing something that's generating anything. We got guests like Amy Schumer who are faking sick and not showing up. I mean,
and then going to do Andy Cohen instead.
Yeah.
Right. So, I really feel like this sort of attitude of this makes me anxious, I don't like it. Yeah, that could have flown when you were successful and you had people covering for it. But now you don't like the responsibility. It's all you, buddy. Nobody's covering for you now. You got this hack team that you've had for the last 30 years. Fred ain't pulling for you. Bowie's not doing shit. What do you got? Marcy? I mean.
Yeah. The next clip is TM. It's called TM Soothes the Savage Pelican.
Howard practiced transcendental meditation as faithfully as a monk says his morning and evening prayers. He was never too busy to drop everything and do it, usually once in the morning and again in the afternoon.
So there's later in the paragraph, it says later his colleague Barbara Freeman would give him the keys to her home near the station so that he could meditate in a quiet environment. He liked his alone time, she said. It was a very private thing with him. Well, she wouldn't have been in danger with him. And then it says that later in the next paragraph, it says private but not always out of view, seated on occasion in the production studio, eyes closed as he silently repeated a mantra. He appeared as if he had nodded off to sleep, which we figure out he must have been anyway. He admitted to
Benjamin
it only more
always
recently.
said this was napping.
It was nap time. Yeah, it was not. And it says he looked like someone's grandmother taking a nap. Levinson recalled.
Why gender switch him like that and say someone's grandmother?
Right.
I wonder. He had a mustache.
Yeah.
At the time.
He does, because he seems so. To me, his body seems so feeble, thin, and his limbs and movements seem feminine.
Yeah, and the dowager hump.
He seems like an old lady in his movements.
He's got the shawl. Yeah,
Yes.
I think he sleeps 12 hours a day, and that's not counting meditation. which is probably another nap.
I think it's totally another nap. The last paragraph of the page. This is not in the audiobook, guys. Howard was so impressed by the stress relieving power of meditation. I'm going to call it napitation now. That he discussed the psychic possibility of being able to levitate himself and others. He and Allison once threw a party, and I remember that he talked about whether it was possible to levitate his mother. Barbara Malmet said. Joe from Chicago would ask, how's the levitating going? Howard's interest from this heady area affirmed Joe's choice of nickname, How Weird.
It is crazy. If you watch, I watched this documentary called Surviving Death, and it talks about people who do seances, and they physically can manifest things from the spirit world into the real world, supposedly, and it's called ectoplasm. And I guess this has been studied and stuff in colleges, and there's physicalness to their seances. This is how good these mediums are, supposedly. Okay, so I sort of believe Howard thinks that he can somehow have this energy. If he repeats this mantra so much, he can manifest this energy. And I truly believe he's one of these dopes that thinks this is possible.
Well, one of the promises of transcendental meditation, there's this thing called the City program, and it's called yogic flying. And the claim is that you can actually fly when you reach a certain level. He actually talks about this in Miss America when he meets Michael Jackson. They both start discussing this because they were both into it. And so, it's a scam. It's not really flying, but they, the believers believe that it is flying, because they haven't witnessed it. They've only heard about it.
Right.
I just typed it in, and there's some YouTube videos of it, and obviously they're just hopping up in the air. They're not flying. It looks stupid as hell. But when you're picturing it described to you, you're going, Jesus, I could fly through the air like that. So it wasn't his idea necessarily to just levitate his mother. This was something that it was a promise of, go deeper into this, and you're gonna be able to learn how to fly.
I really, truly think that it's a sucker who just thinks these things and believes this stuff. And it's interesting that Michael Jackson, of all people, would be talking to him about it, because he had this magical sort of thinking of things too.
Oh, now I will Peter Pan say, more than Michael Jackson.
No kidding. Yeah, but I will say you don't have to go this route. Like, you can believe, you can manifest things within yourself if you have a talent that can be, transcendental, that can be amazing and kind of pull into the universe that's going to affect people like nobody else, like a talent like Michael Jackson. Or do you know what I'm saying? That sort of thing to manifest is fine. But to think you're going to make people fucking fly, I mean, you have to be an idiot. You mentioned
he is a 79 after all. Well, he mentioned the Michael Jackson meeting, and in private parts, they did at some point, I don't know if it was a photo shoot or a sketch on the old E! Show, where he dresses like a boy in Michael Jackson's
That
lap.
was, I believe, the opening of New Year's Rotten Eve or something like that.
Yes.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, because I haven't seen it, and then
he hires a dwarf who he's trying to seduce.
Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, no one enjoyed that photo shoot more than Howard.
Right. Yeah, it was an actual skit. It was not a photo shoot so much as a skit.
Yeah. Right. The dressing up aspect.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Don't you really think, though, that these artists or these people who wish to do these things, I think it's like you want to impart something on the world that is transformational to other people. That your art, your thing that you're doing is the transformational thing. That's the thing that sends, hairs up on everybody's neck. Like when Michael Jackson did the moonwalk for the first time, or you heard Billie Jean, or that's the thing that changes the universe. I don't think about, you want to make people fly?
Well, okay. Well, either way, you're right. It's a talent. Like if the self-belief is one thing, and using that and channeling that into your actual endeavors, your work. And so in that sense, Howard did He didn't. I don't know if he elevated the medium, but he certainly translated it into money, lots of money, lots of power, ad revenue, certainly for a lot of people for many, many years, and managed to conceal the fact that realistically, he was the sum total of DJs he'd copied from, stolen from, heard, listened to, worked with, etc. And then, but then the idea that. But even more than that was the ability to hide that all for so long.
But can we give him the credit of the talent that he had on, like the Gilbert, the Artie?
Sure.
There is something transformational and something that really is the hair stand up on your neck good about some of those shows.
Yeah, but okay, so he's a promoter. He built the stage, maybe. Like he created a play. He created a format where these people could shine. But in the end, at the end of the day, are you laughing? Are you laughing at Howard or are you laughing at the talent? It's always the talent.
And what would you think of it differently if you knew the real narrative of how he got there? Is my point.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know that if people knew he was a fraud earlier, he would never have been so big. He couldn't have been.
Right.
Because that would look at Mencia, look at God, I don't know, like look at anybody not taken down by scandal necessarily, but by people who were not authentic. That guy on Twitter that stole jokes.
Me off.
Yeah, well, she was protected by the Prince of Darkness or something. I have no idea how she survived.
I don't know either. Even
just the leather special, forget the joke stealing, just surviving that special was miraculous. But at any rate, the real talent behind Howard was obviously being able to latch onto a format that worked for him, getting the right people, not paying them enough, keeping them hungry, and then ultimately it's the Howard Stern show, the way Seinfeld was the Seinfeld show, but Seinfeld surrounded himself with way more talented people in terms of at least TV sketch comedy, not sketch comedy, but TV sitcom comedy actors, let's say, that made him look better. You know, you take away all those three people, especially Julia Louis-Dreyfus was clearly no fluke. She's had several successful series on her own, as opposed to the other two.
Michael Richards
were also
was
talented,
amazing.
Granted, but then what do you have? You got Jerry Seinfeld still doing stand-up and maybe making some good money for himself, but he's not in big letters Seinfeld anymore. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I really want to thank Ben and Sam for sitting in on this one, and we're glad to have Sam back as always. And then Ben, thank you so much. Of course, all the fans love you. Never nary a crossword is said about when you're on. People want more of you, but they know they're going to get more when we get into.
We appreciate when we can get you.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
We love your honesty and love your candor.
Yes, and you always got an open forum anytime you want to sit in on an episode that you think you've got something to say about something. Just let us know, and we'll let you know what we're planning. Yeah. So thank you all, guys. We hope you enjoy this. Hope you're enjoying the saga. And I know Paul D. Colford would love to know that extra copies are being bought as a result of this. So cheers from all of us at QF, guys.
Well, it sounds fascinating.
Hey, Howard, this makes sense. I just read in page 6, Diana DeGarmo is writing a book. It's called Go Away, Little Monster.
Well, Eric, I wish you luck with this book. I do.
And take your little dog with you.
And I'm very excited to have a reading and hear what you have to say, okay?
Yeah, I can't wait.
Oh, man.
All right.
Thank you.
Hey, Artie, how many brain cells have you actually killed with coke and heroin?